and Jonathan on the screen. This next one, I don't really know, but when him and my grandma went to Bermuda and the hotel caught on fire. Like, okay. Taking John to Washington, D.C. and seeing the Lincoln Memorial light up at night. Going to Gettysburg for the first time. Crabbing with the kids. Walking around the Coliseum. Taking a helicopter ride in the Rockies. The day my great-grandmother told him that him and my grandma would be getting married. And then the day that him and grandma carved their initials in a tree in front of their house. I don't know why at the time I decided to make this list, but I sure as hell am glad I did. The memories I have with him are something I will cherish for the rest of my life. He was a one in a million kind of guy, as you all know. A great salesman, a wonderful husband, a loving father and grandfather, and a man who was so full of life it was contagious. As much as I have cried, and probably will continue to, because I will miss him so much, I want to take this moment to celebrate, because that's what he would want us to do. So I want everyone to raise a metaphorical drink, and I would like to make a toast to Grandpa Ron. He lived the best life a man could live, surrounded by his loving family and friends, playing golf, living on a beautiful lake, traveling the world, and most importantly, leaving a positive impact on everyone he met. I wish I had more time with him, but I'm so, so, so grateful and proud to say that he was not only my grandpa, but my best friend. May he rest peacefully knowing the memory of his life will last for an eternity. I love you, Grandpa. We all love you. Cheers.
And Lindsay would like to speak next.
I'm Lindsay, everybody. And I just wrote a short poem for my grandmother. Being the youngest, I didn't get many years with you, but I will forever cherish the years we lived through. From driving the boat, sitting on your lap, to riding in the golf cart with you and your cat. Eating your yummy barbecue was always a cheer, even if it only happened once a year. I know you're hitting golf balls up above, just know down here you will forever be loved. And that's all.
And Tracy?
They say that one's life is made up of many journeys and compartments that all help to create the person we become. One chapter ends and a new one begins. 20 years ago, I was in this same place with Harry Platt for the passing of my own father. It was unexpected, a life cut too short, and shattered me to my core. The loss of a spouse, a parent, a grandparent, a true friend, certainly creates an emptiness that we all here are experiencing today. It was only a few months later, after the passing of my dad, that I met my husband Larry, who shared the same name as my father. And he would become my next journey. And boy, I never would have predicted some of the chapters we've had. welcomes me into their family with such openness. And Ron always made me feel like I was his third daughter. There were many times from the first day I met him in Hilton Head in 2002, and even until recently, a week before his surgery, when I needed the guidance and the love of a father figure. It was always during those times that it was Ron who provided me a hug, a joke, a glass of white Zinfandel, or 2 or 3. And he listened to me like my father would. He was an integral part of my journey with Larry. We both shared the same mantra that family gets you through the hard times, and they are always there to celebrate the amazing ones. I'm so grateful for having so many moments of happiness and family time with him. And so as we end a chapter with Ron in our daily lives, and we start one without him, it is those memories, and it's those experiences with him that will help us guide us through our next journey in life.
David.
Larry.
Women and children do this so much better than me. But we're going to try. Thank you all for coming. Those who could make it live and those who are watching on video, I do appreciate you coming here. My dad and I were tight. He coached me in Little League. He coached me at work. I had the privilege of working with him for 15 years before he retired. I golfed with him, fished with him, vacationed with him. He was the best man at my wedding. When I dropped him off at the hospital 2 Tuesdays ago, I was not allowed to go into the hospital. So we hugged in the patient drop-off zone. After the first hug, I said, "Come here for another," and said, "In case I don't see you again." And that's the last time we spoke to each other. Now let me try and get through a poem I wrote. When I think of my dad, so many thoughts come to mind. He taught me so much. He was one of a kind. From how to throw a ball, and how to be a winner, from how to treat a woman, and how to barbecue a dinner. He taught me how to cold call and how to close a deal. He taught me how to drive and sit behind the wheel. He taught me about life. He taught me world history, how to read a book, how to watch a murder mystery. He took me to my first football game, and he taught me how to boo. The Eagles just weren't that good. In fact, they really blew. The Phillies were bad, and the Sixers had no luck. I wanted to move. Our sports teams really did suck. But my dad taught me patience. He said our time will come. In 1980, all city teams were in the finals. The Phillies made it to #1. Dad taught me how to catch and cook crabs and eat oysters off the shell. He taught me a steak should be rare and never cooked well. He taught me how to build a fire and to listen to Frank, to stare at the stars and put money in the bank. He told me we all do what we do the best. He taught me about family and to dress for success. He taught me how to play racquetball and how to line up a putt. He showed me my first Playboy, told me it was classy smut. My dad taught me to fish on a lake in the Poconos. He told me it was okay to cry at a funeral, to bring tissues and blow your nose. He taught me to stand for the national anthem and make sure that you remove your hat. He taught me about man's best friend, always a dog and never a cat. He taught me to fertilize the lawn and how to prune a tree. He told me you get what you pay for, and nothing is ever for free. He taught me to play cards and to never show your hand, to listen to Neil Diamond and Elvis and the best of big band. He taught me to pour the perfect beer and enjoy that very first sip. He taught me to respect my elders and how to bite my lip. He taught me to sell copiers. Was it a blessing or a curse? My dad had a great life. I can think of careers that would have been worse. My dad wasn't perfect, but he always said he was sorry. He taught me about mussels in red and some fried calamari. His teachings will go on and on. My memories will never be dead. I'll keep thinking of him. He will always be in my head. Thank you.
And Marilyn.
Thank you all for coming today. My father, Ron Emerson. My father was a proud man, proud both in the definition of being stubborn, which some of us experienced, or every one of us experienced, and proud in the sense of compelling. Almost every time I saw Bob Leonard or Alan Kagan or any of his other friends, they told me about something my father had shared about my life, even when I asked him, please don't. My father was passionate. He shared his enthusiasms with everyone he knew. Golf, fishing, the Eagles, our family, and hundreds of thousands of just passing enthusiasms and interests. He was just a wee bit competitive. It drove him crazy if anyone else was ever the salesman of the month at Copyquick. My father could talk to anyone. I remember one Sunday at a Costco just 3 miles away from Met Stadium, home of the Giants, where he found 76 random Eagle fans to talk with. After years of living in northern New Jersey and Long Island, I finally convinced him to go into New York and visit his sister one Sunday in November. It turned out to be Marathon Sunday, when there are more people in New York than there are on New Year's Eve. The train and the subway were packed, but we made it up to 86th Street. We got separated from my mother on the subway, and she found her way. My aunt and uncle live off of First Avenue, where the biggest crowds line the streets. My father actually talked a policeman into walking us across First Avenue in the middle of the New York Marathon. He was a great salesman. He could talk anyone into anything and talk to anyone. He was incredibly faithful to my mother. For years, when I was in my 20s and 30s, we went to lunch together a few times a month. And he always made sure that the waitress knew that I was his daughter and he wasn't stepping out with some young chicken. He gave me advice for work too. He taught me that it's important to dress well because you can't make a sale if they won't let you in the door, and if they won't let you in the door if you look like a schlub. He taught me that work, it isn't the hours you work, it's the way you work the hours. I haven't mastered that advice recently, I have to say. He loved music, especially Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, big bands, and a good ballad. His favorite song was My Way. I got to play both the Frank Sinatra and Elvis version for him last week while I was in the hospital, and I think that I ended up on Team Elvis. No. Yeah. One of my father's guiding principles, though, was that he never ever wanted to be like his father. And I just can't imagine not wanting to be like my father. I love you, Dad. I'm not gonna visit you in the cemetery, but you'll always live in my heart. Thank you.
For a person who would rather sit in his car reading until services were quite over, synagogues played a big part in Ron Emerson's life. For instance, in his teens, he belonged to the youth group in his synagogue back in Teaneck. That's where he met Lee. She at the tender age of 14, and he at 16. It was to be in the rabbi's office around Thanksgiving of 1958 that they married, but Lee's unexpected appendicitis delayed the event until she was back on her feet. For those of you who know Lee, you won't be surprised that it didn't take her long. Just a little longer than it took God to create the world, rest, and start the next week. The next two synagogue stories come a little bit later. Ron and Lee enjoyed adventuring and camping with their children, Martha and Larry and Marilyn, so it's not surprising that they checked out a new trailer campsite in the Poconos, especially since they were offering free hot dogs if you listen to the pitch. Frankly, they must have enjoyed the presentation because they bought the lot and camped in their trailer there on many weekends and summers before building and adding on to a house at Lake Wallenpaupack. As their family grew, married and flourished, and as it came time for Ron to retire, they made the decision to move full-time to the Poconos. But there was a catch. Lee insisted on finding a warm destination for the winters. So they headed to North Carolina to Hilton Head. And that's where Ron's next two synagogue connections were made. One Friday night, Lee and Ron decided to go to synagogue down in Hilton Head. It was a large congregation, but they had the custom of asking newcomers to stand up and introduce themselves. When their turn came, Lee and Ron rose and said, "We're the Emersons from the Poconos, a small area of northeast Pennsylvania." Sound of whiplash as two heads snapped around. At the other end of the long pew, another couple stood up. "We're the Kagans, also from the Poconos, a small area of northeast Pennsylvania." And a friendship was born on the spot. As Ellen puts it, from the moment we met Lee and Ron at Temple in Hilton Head, we knew that we had a special friendship. We would always be there for each other, sometimes happily, sometimes grumpily. Ron was always there. We'd laugh together and sorrow together. The four of us had a wonderful relationship. Now there are only two, but I will always remember our times together. From Ron's refusing to cook beef for Al, too well done, to our many games of dominoes, and his care and support when Al was failing. I will never forget my dear friend. Much as they enjoyed their many friends from work, Ron and Lee enjoyed being among Jewish folks. They had affiliated with a synagogue near their place in Lake Wallenpaupack, but Lee was left feeling that this wasn't a good fit. She wandered by chance over to B'nai Harim, still meeting in a church basement, where she was warmly greeted by Jean Schneider and Herb Weil. Although she didn't know it, Al Kagan was president at the time. So despite living at quite a distance from B'nai Harim, Lee persuaded Ron to join the temple. Finding that the Kagans were there made the chance discovery into a real shidduch. That friendship flourished. And Ron found a wonderful circle of friends, if not in the pews, then at the regular poker game with the guys from the temple, or at the golf outings, and the picnics, and the flea markets run by the Kagans, or at the Jubilee restaurant, where several of the guys hung out, and still do, waiting for services to be over, so they could join their wives and their other friends for Kiddush and kibitzing. When, one year not so long ago, I told Ron that his grandson John was going to sing during our high holiday services, He looked at me and he said, "Boy, you'll stop at nothing to get me into shul." Nothing stopped Ron from enjoying and filling over his family. The 7 grandchildren have been his delight throughout their lives. In a tribute of mutual love, so many of them came to his bedside to say goodbye, each whispering their love into his ear. And many of you were able to see the moving birthday tribute video playing outside the room, with love emanating from each screen. Nieces and nephews, by birth or by mutual adoption, felt as connected as if they were sons and daughters. People felt Ron's warmth even when he tried to hide it under a crusty guise. As Peggy Hannon, another B'nai Harim friend, put it, Ron was very bright, very funny. He had a warm, caring, and loving heart that he frequently hid from the world. I always truly enjoyed his company. He was quirky and funny, and I'll miss him, as we all will. Zichrona L'Bracha. His memory brings blessing. Think about Ron and smile. Emulate Ron and be a mensch. As a tribute before El Malay Rachamim, I'd like to call on his grandson John to sing one of his favorite songs.
My grandpa was many things: a loving husband and father, a successful salesman, an avid golfer, a die-hard Eagles fan. He was loud and outspoken, particularly about politics. He was the life of the party. He was fiercely loyal to those he cared about and would go out of his way to help his friends and family whenever he could. Personally, he was a role model on how to live life to the fullest. But among the numerous hats that he wore, he was also one of the biggest fans of Frank Sinatra that I've ever met. I have many treasured memories of listening to Sinatra's songs while my grandpa grilled steaks or ribs out on his deck, or while spending a lazy afternoon on his boat on Lake Wallenpaupack. Frank sang one song in particular that I think sums up my grandfather's life pretty perfectly. And it's been the request of several people here that I sing it today. I will try to get through it without crying or cracking. So Grandpa, this one's for you. And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full, I've traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way. Regrets, I have had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I
rise for El Malay Rachamim. El Malay Rachamim, Shofim V'Maromim, Hamitzin Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei HaShekhinah, Im Kedoshim Taharim Kezohar Harakia Matzirim, Et Nishmat Avram Ben Yaakov, Shechalach L'Olamo, Bal Harachamim Yasirehu B'Seter Kenafav L'Olamim, V'Yitzror HaChaim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachavato, V'Tanuach V'Shalom Al Mishkavo, V'Namar, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Ron Emerson, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. May we be seated. There is a modern translation of the El Malay Rachamim that I think would have resonated a little bit more with Ron. In Malay Rachamim, you who are full of compassion, whose ideals are high and whose values are gifts forever, whose love is sacred and pure and whose hope is bright as the glow of the heavens. You, all, recognize the passing of Ron Emerson into the embrace of eternity. As he is cherished in the hearts of all who mourn, let his deeds continue to move and inspire so that his memory will be, as he was through his life, blessing and a comfort. We rise now for the Kaddish. Yikadav, Yikadash, Shemei Rabbah, Ve'oma Divrach Chirutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon U'vyomechon, V'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agalah U'bizman Kariv V'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarach, Ve'olam U'lomei Omaya, Yibarach V'yishtabach, Yipa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar V'yitalev V'yitchaval Shemei D'Kedusha, Ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbachata v'nechemata, Ve'amiron ve'oma v'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabamim Shemaya, V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru, Amen. U'zeh shalom v'yimrumav, U'ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru, Amen. You may be seated as I read to you the Myron Kaddish, the glory of life. Your response will be l'chaim when I indicate. May the glory of life be extolled. May the world be blessed with peace, all life hallowed by love and respect. Let life be blessed and glorified and exalted and honored. Though beyond praises, songs, and adorations we may utter, let life be celebrated. For us, for all Israel, for all people, may the promise and the gift of life come true. May peace embrace all of us, all Israel, all the world. May peace be granted to us who mourn, and be a comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Zecher Tzadikim L'Bracha. May the memory of good people be for us a blessing. And may Ron and Emerson live on in our hearts and in our stories. May we smile forever, having had him in our lives. This ends our Philo service. There will be a Zoom Shiva this evening. I think that some of you at least have gotten the link for that. If not, go home and check your email. Thank you so much for bringing comfort to the family of Ron Emerson.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask that we can remain seated for just one moment. Upon leaving the chapel, please continue through the doorways and do not stand and talk in the doorways. You're welcome to talk outside or to the right-hand side of the lobby. But please make sure the doorway is left open. And folks in this row, we can begin to head to our conference. Folks in this row.
Oh my God.